Welcome to this seminar. My name is Mona Thowsen. I'm the Secretary General of PWYP Norway, and I'm very happy that you are all here today. We have invited to this seminar because we have 25 guests from 6 resource-rich African countries. They have come to Norway to demand politics to stop capital flight from their countries, rather than charitable donations. There are only a few of our international network, which consists of over 650 organizations from over 70 countries in the world. The problem we see is that export of oil and minerals from Africa generate at least 9 times greater revenues than aid. But large amount of these revenues that could have been invested for a common good in their countries seem to end up in secrecy jurisdictions that have made it their business to sell law structures that are particularly designed to conceal information about activities and ownership. And such secrecy gives incentives to corruption and capital flight. Financial secrecy has been used to cover up enormous profits from trade of non-renewable resources. For over 50 years, revenues has been kept hidden for the general public to the benefit of corrupt elites and firms involved. For over 50 years. Where have all the money gone? Financial secrecy has made it difficult for people, for ordinary citizens, to know the extent to which the funds are reinvested for domestic development or exported to such secrecy jurisdictions. That means that generations of people in resource-rich countries have been robbed for an economic potential that could have been translated into jobs, education, infrastructure, health services, all those things that can create a good society for many people. When 2/3 of the poorest people in the world live in resource countries, it seems quite logical to stop the capital flight from their countries. We know something about what is happening. Just through our small contributions, we found that extractive industries use at least 6,000 subsidiaries, and 1/3 of those are incorporated in secrecy jurisdictions. We looked at extractive industries being big users of a financial lethal instrument called derivatives, and that the value behind derivatives is 10 times the world GDP. We looked at revenues from production of non-renewable resources disappeared. Over 110 billions disappeared through mispricing of crude oil in the US and EU between 2000 and 2010. We problematized that lawyers' duty of confidentiality that springs from the best interest of society has a darker side when companies can claim client confidentiality to protect themselves against insight from government about activities and transactions routes and structures. A tax system only works if we all contribute. It only works if we trust that we get something back. The problem is that a tax system will not work if you can choose to be a taxpayer or not. Tax has become a voluntary thing for multinational companies. With the assistance of professional tax advisors with deep knowledge of the distinction between different countries' tax regimes, advanced tax planning across national borders. To plan and facilitate this has become a lucrative business in itself. Financial secrecy will be one of the most important problems to tackle for our societies in the years to come. How can government explain that they can claim ordinary citizens that receive a salary as taxpayers, but they are not willing to claim multinational companies as taxpayers? We as citizens need to ask ourselves if we think that is okay. Which society do we create then? And is that the sort of society that we want to see and live in? So what PWYP Norway is saying to our government is that we have been claimed as taxpayers, and you have all the information about us. You should make sure you have the relevant information also from multinational companies. For resource-rich developing countries that need to mobilize own capital for development, this is dramatic. But we're also not immune towards this harmful effects ourselves. Look at Greece. So we have proposed an extended country-by-country reporting that goes beyond tax payments for companies, since one figure in isolation does not make much sense. How can we know it's correct when companies use all these mechanisms to shift profit before it's being taxed? So the solution we proposed is easy, simple, cost-free, and unbureaucratic. All we ask is for companies to publish 8 accounting figures for each country that they are in. And it needs to be connected to their consolidated accounts, and it needs to cover all the countries. There should not be exceptions for secrecy jurisdictions, as their main functions facilitating capital flight. This is a very exciting day for us, because a 2-year process has been finalized, and one panel participant today will come from the Standing Committee of Finance and tell us how this process has ended. Today's program will have 2 parts. The first part is about the demand for transparency, and with us we have Abena Afari and Winnie Ngabiirwe from Ghana and Uganda. They have opinions about this that they would like to share with us today. They want politics to change. Also, investors have opinions about what we see, and we will hear more about that from Heidi Finsgårds, advisor for responsible investments in KLP. The second part will be a panel debate, which will be moderated by Ingrid Salvesen, where we will have representatives from politics, business, and civil society. After that, we will have a small coffee and break, and then we will have a presentation of a new report, which is called Windfall Taxes. It does not mean that PWYP Norway recommends windfall taxes. All we want to say is that countries should check their tax toolbox. Yes. And we also have an updated version of our extended country-by-country reporting standards, our policy proposal to the EU, where we have incorporated a lot of the counter-arguments and questions we've had from politicians, from investors, from civil society, and other users of financial information over the last years. So this is an updated version, and I recommend you to have a look at it if you would like to arm yourself up with all the good arguments for transparency. Thank you. And then I would like to introduce Abena Afari from Christian Aid.
Thank you very much, Mona. That was aptly put. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and greetings from the warm and sunny plains of Africa. We are here because we have a passion for Africa, and we are here to tell you how tax dodging costs lives in Africa every day. Capital flight is a major way by which most African countries have been forced into poverty. Up to $1.44 trillion are lost every year from Africa, end up in tax havens, mostly facilitated by multinational companies. These amounts of monies usually are unreported and usually also referred to as illicit capital. We are from some of the African countries which face the highest capital flight. We have here colleagues from Tanzania, Liberia, Uganda, Ghana, and Africa's new baby, South Sudan. These amounts of monies which are lost from African countries every year amount to, and also we have our colleagues from Mozambique. Yes. These amounts of monies amount to 10 times the annual global aid flows to Africa and twice the debt African countries pay every year. Just imagine it, 1.44 trillion US dollars. That could do a lot for development in Africa. In Tanzania alone, between 2002 and 2006, Tanzania lost 660 million US dollars. In comparison, the health budget of Tanzania for 2012 was only $7.8 million. Women die every day in Tanzania giving birth, whilst these monies are unreported, untaxed, and end up in tax havens. If African countries are able to recover these monies, we could reallocate these monies to saving lives, to combating disease and hunger, and reducing poverty. It is undeniable that losing tax affects both poor and rich countries. That is usually the argument on the other side. But you would agree with me that it affects poor countries much, much, much more than it affects rich countries. Given or granted, African governments have our own sets of challenges. We have weak institutions, large informal sectors which make it difficult to collect tax, and then corruption in governments which diminish the willingness of citizens to pay taxes. As if these challenges were not enough, the international community adds its own sets of challenges. For instance, many African governments face international pressure to adopt domestic policies which undermine our taxing rights. Apart from that, tax competition amongst African countries lowers tax rates to unbelievable levels. Tax holidays are offered for years on end, all in a bid to attract foreign direct investment. I guess when there's a race, everybody wants to win. But in the race of tax competition, African countries are racing to the bottom, not to the finishing line. On top of all these challenges, there is a lack of transparency and accountability with regards to agreements signed between multinational companies and our African governments. We usually find this in the extractive sector. According to some development experts, in the next 25 years, we should not expect much from Africa. According to their estimates, there will be more wars, more destabilization, more poverty. But then we, the 25 of us here, are a young group of Africans with a hope for a better Africa. We hope to see an Africa which is independent, an Africa which is self-sustaining, and an Africa that is rich, probably as rich as Norway, but with a better climate. To quote the legendary Martin Luther King Jr., we must accept finite disappointment, but we must never lose infinite hope. We from the African continent, in spite of all the gloomy pictures, haven't lost hope of a better future. We have a dream of a better Africa. And just how we are going to get that dream, my sister Winnie from Uganda will tell us how that new dream for Africa would be achieved. Thank you.
Thank you, my colleague from Ghana. Thank you, everyone, for coming to today's event. We are grateful for the opportunity that we are able to talk to you and share with you what you think should be done in order to save lives. As she mentioned, tax dodging costs lives. And in Uganda, in Africa, in Tanzania, in Mozambique, we lose lives every day. We are a rich continent, but we don't know what our natural resources are bringing to us as a continent and as a people. As she mentioned, the problem of capital flight is not only an African problem, because this money comes from Africa and it is absorbed in Western economies. And therefore, we need concerted efforts. We share the problem and we should share the responsibility in fixing it. But it's going to start with us as Africans. As she mentioned, the 25 of us who are here, we share the challenge and we share the zeal to tackle the challenge. We know that we must fix our social our political and our economic systems if natural resources are to deliver what we want them to deliver. We need to do this in partnership with you, of course, and some of the things that we propose include the following. We need to see that there is automatic exchange of information between different tax authorities. We know that Norway has been in discussion with some of the tax havens, and indeed, you're progressing well. You're reaching agreements with some of the countries, but it shouldn't be that they give you this information because they wish to. They should be forced to give us this information, because the day they don't give us this information, they are condemning us to poverty, they are condemning us to death. When tax havens refuse to give us this information, we propose that there should be sanctions against them. And in that way, we hope that everyone will get on board and realize that this that we are doing is a global initiative that is supposed to put everyone on the path to development. We also propose that oil companies, mining companies, gas companies, investors should be able to declare their profits, not only in countries where they are extracting these natural resources, but also in countries where they have their subsidiary offices. And those usually are the tax havens. With this information being part of the international financial reporting requirements, there's going to be improved transparency as well as improved accountability on the part of citizens towards their governments, towards investors. We know that Norway is a champion of transparency initiatives, and indeed we commend you for that. And we know that you have opportunities that you still use, including your leadership role in OECD. We hope that you will use this to put transparency and accountability on the agenda, and we know that you will continue to support and mentor countries that want to work towards implementing the EU directive, as well as the US regulations, commonly known as Dodd-Frank. This, in addition to extended country-by-country reporting, is one major step in ensuring that there is transparency, in ensuring that countries are getting the taxes they're supposed to be getting, and ensuring that natural resource is an engine to development and not a curse into poverty, into war, into destabilization. Together, we should urge investors and oil companies to practice transparency and raise their corporate standards. We are here at the invitation of PWYP Norway, and we thank you for the opportunity. But we also urge you, PWYP Norway and Norwegian government, to support African governments, to support African civil society organizations, to work with oil companies, to work with mining companies, to work with multinational investors, to a dialogue on how we can fix the problem of capital flight. We look forward to continue working with you, and we know that for sure this is going to bring the desired benefits that we seek. Finally, and maybe the most important thing, we recommend that this flight capital that leaves Africa should be repatriated back to Africa. And this is for two reasons. From the moral point of view, much of this money belongs to Africans legitimately, and they should get their money back. And on the economic point of view, this is good for financial stability. This money would be available for investment. This money would be available for improving education, improving access to health care, so that tomorrow when I get pregnant or another lady gets pregnant, we shouldn't be thinking that we might die because our health systems are not fixed. We should be knowing that we are exercising our right, that we are going to give birth to a baby, that we are going to take the African dream to a higher step. We shouldn't be scared because we do not have resources. If African governments were able to collect the money from taxes that they deserve to collect, we would be having up to 220 billion US dollars, and that is the money that could be wisely invested if we hold our governments accountable, if we had good discussions, if we had multi-stakeholder dialogues. And the African dream that my sister talked about would not only be a dream, but should be something that we live. I thank you very much for listening to us, and I hope that we can work together to ensure that these policy recommendations are taken on, and that we develop, companies invest, and we work together to have a world that is worth living in. Thank you very much.